Hello everybody, welcome back to the Nocturnal Gaming Network. My name is Xeriua, and today we are once again playing Spaceflight Simulator. And today we are going to continue with our exploration. I know that I said that we would be, doing space station stuff and, we would just continue with the station stuff, but I don't want to get, don't want people to get bored. I want to keep it mixed up here. So today, after we've done a few episodes of the space station, we are going to send a probe to Mars. So let's go right to the build menu and let's get going here. Now, other than the fairing, actually that's not true because we are using electric thrusters on this. But, this is going to use almost vanilla pieces other than like decorative stuff. So, it's the launch itself is possible on vanilla. The satellite isn't quite because, it's got decorations and some electric thrusters on it just in case. But, yeah, this is something you can follow along with at home if you have the vanilla game, for the most part at least. And we're going to get started here. We're going to go straight to the utility tab. We're going to take and drop a probe core, and then we're going to drop a secondary probe core, and we're going to rotate it. And this is going to be a fairly decent sized build, so we're going to want to launch this thing sideways, basically. And we're going to start far enough down here that hopefully we can fit a fairing around it and cap it off really nice. Now, let's go to electrical. We're going to put a couple batteries on this because I feel like that's realistic that a station like this would have some sort of batteries. We're going to go and we're going to put some fuel on it. And I'm going to use the orange fuel this time just because I can. No other reason than that. And now we need to go back to utility. What we're going to do is we're going to put some body to this station here, right? We're gonna go and flip these around. All right, we're going to put a couple more on here. Something like this. Like this. Okay. And then now we can take some small ones. And we're going to create these little cage thingies here. Now, while we're right here, let's put solar panels on this thing. Do I want the big ones? Do I want the small ones? I think I want the big ones. I'm going to do the big ones because we're going to be at Mars and I feel like the big ones will fit better there. And then we're going to put a couple more of these structural members. Now we want to start putting like dishes on this thing. And as always, we're going to use the connectors for some sort of like, or not connectors, but docking ports for some sort of communications dish. This one's going to point away from the planet. And, in my head here, I see this as being like a way for this satellite to do communication with the command on Earth while still pointing in the correct direction. Do I want to put, how about since this is a fairly decent sized, no, I was going to put 4 of the RCS thrusters. I don't think we really need 4. Let's go back to electrical here, and we're going to put a couple of these RTGs, radioisotope thermoelectric generators. And we're going to use a couple of these electric engines. And they're basically going to be for like show here. They're not necessarily entirely for use. They're more for decoration, but we're going to put them right there along with another docking port. And now it's time to actually do the scientific equipment that I see looking at the planet, because we're going to Mars today, and we are going to put some sort of, let's say that's a telescope there, and then we're going to put a couple smaller dishes on, and I'm going to say this is for, they're going to scan the planet, right? There we go. Something like this, and as always I'll use my other parachute here to put a little bar on the dish. So we've got some scanners and we've got a telescope, and now we need to actually get our fairing going. Let's start with a fairing, and we need to worry about how we're going to actually connect this thing up to some sort of launch vehicle. So I'm going to put just a separator like right here, and that'll be my connection point. And we're going to go to the fairings, and we're just going to start with the biggest fairing over the widest part, and we're just going to slowly work our way down. So biggest, and then the second biggest, and then we can just sort of neck this thing down, something like that, and that's all the way lowest. I do need that one, so I can't. Did I miss one? I think I did. I missed that one. And I used two of those ones. Okay, good. That's why it looked weird. I think I got it figured out now. Oh no, I'm going the wrong way. There we go. So we've got the bulb, and now we're going to start to neck this one down, and I'm actually going to skip on this one. Skip a couple stages. But when? How should I skip? I don't think I should skip that one. I think I should... There we go. Just like that, to give us a fairly nice rounded area here. And I don't know. I actually think maybe I want to put a couple of the biggest stages on this, and then use those and try to make it a nice even or more even fairing, something like that, rather than jumping around quite so much. Ooh, don't move the solar panel, put that back. There we go. There we are. I feel like that's a nicer fairing, the way it's set right there. I can put that out of there. It's not, all over the place with lots of bump outs in it. It's, a nice smooth section and then a very nice transition. I feel like that is much more aerodynamic and would be better. Now, the second part of the rocket here, we're actually going to include this in the fairing also. So we've got our payload, which is the satellite. This next stage here is going to be a transfer rocket to get us to Mars. And then we're going to go ahead and actually attach our fairing to a separator. So to do that, we're just going to put a couple more fairing pieces over this transfer stage. There we go, just like that. That way I can appropriately put the separator in the correct location, just like that. Now, our next stage, we need, basically, I want to use the triple thruster first stage, so that's not going to quite give us enough speed to actually escape the Earth's atmosphere and get nice and circular. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a second stage here, and we need... Mass is 5, 4.5. So let's do something like this. That gives us 29 tons of fuel here, right? Oh, excuse me. 27 tons of fuel, because this one only contains 18 tons of fuel. It's a 20-ton tank, but there's only 18 tons of fuel. Alright, so there's our second stage, and now we have our separator. It's time to actually do the first stage, the primary lift stage. and we're going to put the triple rocket configuration that I really like here, because this is a very powerful launch stage if you're doing, medium-sized, maybe, I don't know, large rockets, because I mean we have 3 of the Hawks, and each of those gives us 115 tons of thrust. So we're at 345 tons. We have about 100 extra tons of thrust, which gives us a fairly decent thrust to weight ratio at 1.6 for the size of this rocket. Because I mean, in reality here, we don't really have that big of a rocket for the size of our payload. And I'm going to include the 3rd stage as part of the payload here, because so this should be basically ready to go. I think when it comes down to it, we're going to have a little bit extra fuel here in the 3rd stage, but we want to make sure that we put the command module, the probe body, on it, so we can, once we get ourselves circularized around Mars, we can deorbit this, and we only have the satellite in orbit. So let's get going here, and as always, I need to zoom myself out so I can get a very nice picture for my thumbnail, and I'm going to say, there's my picture. And then now we are going to turn our engines on. I'm just going to double check that they are all on, because if you don't have them all on, you're going to, well, probably crash, and you'll turn rapidly out of control here. What's going on here? Oh yeah, that's right. I was deorbiting a control module. That's right. So today we are going to leave Earth's sphere of influence for the first time, and we're going to head to Mars. So if we keep zooming out, you can see that I have the entire solar system here. That's a mod, and in the future I will be showing you how to install the solar system mod for this game. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in on Mars here. And we don't have to zoom in. We can get lucky and click it from out in space. But I like to zoom in. That way I can make sure that I have selected the planet rather than one of its moons, which I suppose doesn't matter too much, but that's what I like doing. Now, once we have selected it, you'll see this little burn area open up on the map. And basically what that means is not only do we have to burn at a specific point around the Earth to actually move our line of trajectory out into the unknown, we also have to make sure that the Earth is in an appropriate location relative to Mars, because if we don't, we're going to be using an extreme amount of fuel to actually, go and hit Mars. Basically, because Earth moves at a faster speed, well, not a faster speed, but its orbit is smaller, Earth's going to be moving faster relative to, the orbit of Mars. So because of that, we want to be behind Mars by a little bit. And, in other games, I've seen people basically make an imaginary triangle or angle between the 2 planets and the sun. So if we continue with that, basically we want Earth to be behind Mars by really roughly 10 or 15 degrees. And what that's going to do is when you burn prograde at the specific spot on Earth, well, in the specific spot in orbit, it's going to raise your apoapse out of the planet and into an appropriate location. I think, based on where we are right here, it's actually going to be up here on almost a 11 or 12 o'clock position. But basically that's what we need to do. It's fairly simple to find a transfer window to Mars, especially where the game basically goes through and puts it where it needs to be. So now what we need to do is we need to wait. And we're just going to speed up time and let Earth go around until it catches up with that spot. Which, again, when that actually happens, the spot's going to be probably about 6 o'clock, maybe 7. No, about 6 o'clock. So we're right about here, 6:30. Let's call it 7 because. And we're going to wait until the Earth reaches this white spot. And I'm just going to accelerate at about 10,000 times as soon as the Earth hits this. So right about here. Yeah, we're not quite there yet. Let's actually just get into it. A little bit more right there. There we go. Now we're going to launch. All right, and because I'm not really prepared, I suppose I could have actually gone through and tried this or something to make sure that I could tell you exactly where it's going to be. But I think our area we're going to have to burn to leave is going to be like over here somewhere on the Earth. So we'll see. I've talked for far too long. It's time to actually get this rocket in the air. So I did turn my engines on. We're going to go to 100% thrust, and we are going to launch. And this is just like a normal gravity turn that we're going to do. So we'll turn our thrust on, and we're going to wait till about 200 meters. Once we hit 200 meters, we'll start turning over. There we go. 200 meters, here we are. We want to be at about 45 degrees by 2,000 meters. So we're doing a fairly good job here, like nothing to worry about. This is a nice, easy launch here because we have plenty of extra... Ooh, that's too fast though. Plenty of extra thrust on this. Remember, we want 60 degrees approximately by 5,000 meters. So that's about when the right arrow on the little marker is pointing downward. So that's pretty good. We're actually doing really good on fuel here. So we're just going to pretty much follow prograde. And our apoapsis is going to move away from us. We don't really need to turn too much right now. We do need to get ready to stage, though. So, get ready to do that. Let's switch over here. Alright, as soon as it runs out, boom. And our second stage is on. Perfect. We want to keep ourselves following prograde. We don't want to get too far radial out here. Not that it would necessarily be a problem, but we want to have a nice low orbit around the Earth when we actually make it to orbit, because we don't want to use too much fuel around Earth. We want to save it in the third stage for our actual trip to Mars. So there we go. We're almost out of the atmosphere with our apoapsis. So we're just going to let it go out of the atmosphere, and then once it leaves the atmosphere, once it hits 30 kilometers, what we're going to do is we're going to lower our thrust down. So right about here, we're just going to lower our thrust to like 20% just to keep it so we aren't losing speed. Right? We don't want to lose speed. And we got to get ready to stage. So I'm going to flick my thrust all the way up. I'm going to pop the fairing, separate the stage, and hit our third stage. Alright, and now we need to go through and circularize, which circularizing isn't going to be that big of a deal. We're actually going fairly fast, like relative to how we normally come out of the orbit here. I'm actually going to accelerate time a little bit to get myself a little higher. There we go. And then we can continue burning prograde here. And now we just need to circularize. I mean, we're probably not going to completely circularize if I was correct about where I need to get ready to leave, and it looks like I was pretty close to correct. We've got like that, what is that, probably 4 o'clock position there. Once that gets out of the atmosphere, which it is, I'm actually just going to preemptively turn myself to the right angle to leave. See, our periapsis is still in the atmosphere, so we didn't completely circularize, but that's okay. Now we will accelerate time, and we're actually going to start burning a little bit early here. So let's say like right about here. And that way, as we're doing our entire burn, we're going to burn early, we're going to burn, do this in just one burn, so we'll go through the little zone that it gives us and come out on the other side of the zone, and we'll still be burning. And we may need to, use the rotation to actually get ourselves on a proper encounter, but I think we're probably going to be pretty good. When you're doing like interplanetary burns like this, it can sometimes be difficult to get an encounter if you don't break your burn up, if you burn a little too early, a little too late, and you don't balance them. So this is a fairly easy burn. It's going to use, I'd say roughly half, 2/3 of our fuel, so we'll have 1/3-ish of fuel remaining to circularize ourselves around Mars, which that's plenty. That's plenty to get a nice circular orbit and then go through and actually, deorbit the craft afterwards. Because once we start gaining height in our apoapsis, like once we pass the moon's orbit, it's just going to skyrocket the apoapsis. So, it's going to be nice and easy. The only thing that we should worry about, which is a potential here, is getting an encounter with the moon as we're burning out, which we did, but that's okay. So I'm going to slow myself down here, get my thrust throttled down a little bit, like 30%. Alright, here we go. So now we can throttle back up. We're just going to keep an eye on the Mars approach. And we're going to throttle ourselves down as we get close. So here we are. We're only 150 million miles away from, or excuse me, not miles. Not miles. This is a space game. It's scientific. Million meters. Don't yell at me in the comments. Or go ahead. I don't care. I have big shoulders. I can deal with it. There we go. And now we just, boom, there's our encounter. So now we will zoom in on Mars, similar to like we did with the moon. And it's going to show our information. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to 0.1% thrust, and I'm going to try and lower my periapsis to in between the two moons, Phobos and Deimos. And I'm going to say like 2,500 kilometers. So something like that. 24.7 is probably good. And now we're basically ready. I mean, all we got to do is just fast forward some time a little bit. So let's do that. Here we are. Apparently it unfollowed me. There we go. So now I can just sort of follow this, and we'll zoom out just a little tiny bit. Huh. Maybe it has to do with the fact that I'm in the Earth's sphere of influence. That's the reason it doesn't want to follow the rocket. Follow. Thank you. Alright, here we go. Now we are appropriately following. You can see the trajectory we are taking, leaving the Earth's orbit and making our way to Mars orbit. Now, we actually just barely didn't get a perfect encounter. We do sort of go outside of, we're a little bit ahead of Mars instead of like directly on target with it. So we actually go past Mars's orbit around the sun, and then we actually come back. But we're going to be at the slowest velocity in our orbit because we're almost at the top, and once we hit the top, the sun will start pulling us back towards it. So, once we get close to Mars, we want to make sure that we slow ourselves down because we want to be ready for the encounter here. All right, here we are. So you can see the encounter. Once we hit where it says encounter, we'll be transferred to Mars's sphere of influence. We can see our little path. Once we hit Mars's sphere of influence, it'll actually show us our, let's slow the time down, it'll show us our path if we were to not make orbit around Mars. It would lower our periapsis around the sun a little bit, and we'd actually be fairly close to the Earth's orbit. So if we, say, missed Mars, then potentially it would be possible to hit Earth again and, make it home if we had a team of astronauts or something here. So let's check our ship here. We're going to rotate it retrograde, and we're going to get ready to capture ourselves around Mars. So we can speed up time again. While we're right here and thinking about it, let's put our thrust up to 100%. Or is it? Oh, I'm not going fast enough. There we go. Alright, so it's not going to take that much to capture around Mars, but we don't want to go right at our periapsis. We want to go a little bit before. So I'm going to say right here is fine. 100% thrust. We've lowered the time acceleration, and now we just burn. And as you can see, our trajectory is kind of curling itself around Mars's orbit to circular, or to more circular. And what this is actually doing is it's extending our periapsis from the sun upwards towards Mars's other side. So, eventually, where we're actually pretty much right at apoapsis here, it's pretty much just raising our periaps. But eventually, it's going to flip it around, and when it does, pop, there it is. We're in Mars' sphere of influence. And I've actually cut the thrust because I didn't want to let my rocket run away here. We are just going to thrust, and we're going to keep slowing ourselves down here, throttling down, because we want to... What am I doing? I'm losing height. So we want to get closer to our periapsis so we don't lose too much height here as we're doing this. Come on, a little bit further. Right there. Now I can turn just slightly radial out. Oh, I passed the periapsis, so that's slightly radial in to raise our orbital height at periaps. And then now that we've passed the periaps again, we can go very slightly radial out. Alright. Throttle ourselves down. We're looking for a perfect 2.5 kilometers over Mars. So let's go down to like 1% here. 0.7 is close enough. That will allow us to get really close. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Let's go to 0.1% and see if we can stop perfectly. Ooh, so close. There we are. We are at a height at apoapsis of 2.5 thousand kilometers here. So let's move around to apoaps. We're going to wait till we're right on apoaps here, because if we go too far before or too far after as we're burning, it's going to affect our apoaps, and we don't want to do that. We just want to We just want to raise our periaps. So we're going to stay at like 0.1% thrust. That's probably pretty good. We may have to adjust our apoapsis ever so slightly here. Oh, 99.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ooh, bam. And we are at a perfectly circular orbit now. So, what we are going to do is we're going to separate the satellite. Boom, there's the separated satellite. Now, we are still in control of the rocket, and we're going to flip it around, and we're going to get prepared to deorbit it. Let's actually time accelerate a little tiny bit here because I don't want the thrust from this rocket to destabilize the satellite's orbit at all. So let's actually just go a little further because I can. So that's probably pretty good right there. We can go back to map and just watch how fast this is going to deorbit me. Boom. 3 or 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 6, 7. So about 7 seconds is all it takes, and I'm just going to go like nice and perfect like that. And then I'm going to rotate inward because I have way too much fuel and just burn towards the planet. Something like this. Which way am I going? Am I going the right way? Yes, I am going the right way. I didn't screw something up here. So that's awesome. We're just going to use the rest of our fuel on this because we can, because I want to. And we're going to see actually how far we can... Oh no, we've got an encounter with Phobos. See how far we can raise our apoapsis off of Mars, burning straight at it. Actually, I wonder if it's possible to glitch the game out and hit Mars so fast that you, like, I don't even know, hit Mars so fast that you somehow, like, clip through it. Alright, so we've raised our apoapsis. We're burning radial compared to the sun, so we've actually sort of rotated it instead of purely raising it. But we've raised it about, say, a quarter of the way to Jupiter, which is okay. It's a decent amount. It's nothing super special. Now, let's finish the mission. We'll switch to the satellite here. We are not quite in a perfect orbit. What we want to do is we want to check our direction here. So, what we are going to do is rotate ourselves retrograde. Not retrograde, prograde. Turn our 2 electric engines on. There we go. Be very careful when you're doing this. We'll actually extend our solar panels too, but be very careful because if you aren't careful, you may actually click one of the docking ports, and then after you click the docking port, you will have sort of detached it. Let's see what happens with this thing. I think it's just going to crash, but maybe it'll go through. Boop, it just disappeared. Okay, so let's make our way around Mars, one orbit, and then after that we can use our 2 electrical engines to stabilize our orbit. So like before, we want to be right on the apoapsis here. And we want to be pointing as close to prograde as possible, so something like this. And we'll go to 31. Whoa! Whoa, that was way too much thrust. It just jumped so fast. All right, we're gonna point ourselves retrograde here, and we're gonna try again. I don't know why I did 30% thrust. I apparently only needed like, oh, I don't know, 2% thrust. All right, let's try 7%. Yeah, that's decent. I can just go down. Let's go down to like 2, like I said. All right. Maybe even 1%. We're getting away from our periaps, so let's accelerate. There we are. Here's periaps again. Make sure that we're rotating ourselves to the correct orientation. We'll go down to 0.6. 1.1. Alright, point 1, here we come. Once again, go to periaps. Oh no, we're a little past periaps, but that's okay. We have so little thrust here, it shouldn't matter too much. Like, we shouldn't be getting any height at the periaps as long as we're burning close enough to prograde or retrograde. Alright, so here we are. We're going to rotate ourselves towards Mars. Bam, there we are. We have a nice satellite. It's beginning to work on, gathering data about Mars. It can also gather data about Phobos and Deimos. So in the future, we're going to be landing on one or multiple of these. So keep an eye out for those episodes. Thank you all so much for watching. My name's Xeriua, and this is the Nocturnal Gaming Network, bringing you Spaceflight Simulator. Have yourselves a wonderful night, everybody.